Hans Poulsen Egede was a Norwegian Lutheran missionary who launched mission efforts to Greenland, which led him to be styled the Apostle of Greenland. He established a successful mission among the Inuit and is credited with revitalizing Dano-Norwegian interest in the island after contact had been broken for hundreds of years. He founded Greenland's capital Godthåb, now known as Nuuk. Background: Hans Egede was born into the home of a civil servant in Harstad, Norway, nearly 150 miles north of the Arctic Circle. His paternal grandfather had been a vicar in Vester Egede on southern Zealand, Denmark. Hans was schooled by an uncle, a clergyman in a local Lutheran church. In 1704 he traveled to Copenhagen to enter the University of Copenhagen, where he earned a bachelor's degree in theology. He returned to Hanoi Island after graduation, and in April 1707 he was ordained and assigned to a parish on the equally remote archipelago of Lofoten. Also in 1707 he married Gertrude Rasch, who was 13 years his senior. 4 children were born to the marriage, 2 boys and 2 girls. Greenland. At Lofoten, Egede heard stories about the Old Norse settlements on Greenland, with which contact had been lost centuries before. Beginning in 1711, he sought permission from Frederick IV of Denmark to search for the colony and establish a mission there, presuming that it had either remained Catholic after the Danish Reformation or been lost to the Christian faith altogether. Frederick gave consent at least partially to re-establish a colonial claim to the island. Egede established the Bergen Greenland Company with $9,000 in capital from Bergen merchants, $200 from the Danish king, and a $300 annual grant from the Royal Mission College. The company was granted broad powers to govern the peninsula, to raise its own army and navy, to collect taxes, and to administer justice. The king and his council, however, refused to grant monopoly rights to whaling and trade in Greenland out of a fear of antagonizing the Dutch. Harbe and 2 smaller ships departed Bergen on the 2nd of May 1721 bearing Egede, his wife and 4 children, and 40 other colonists. On July 3, they reached Nuuk Kangaloo and established Hope Colony with the erection of a portable house on Kangak Island, which Egede christened the Island of Hope. Searching for months for descendants of the Old Norse colonists, he found only the local Inuit people and began studying the language. Missionizing among them required some imagination, as, for instance, the Inuit had no bread nor any idea of it, requiring the Lord's Prayer to be translated as, "Give us this day our daily meal." By the end of the first winter, many of the colonists had been stricken with scurvy and most returned home as soon as they could. Egede and his family remained with a few others and in 1722 welcomed 2 supply ships the king had funded with the imposition of a new tax. His explorations found no Norse survivors along the western shore, and future work was misled by the 2 mistaken beliefs, both prevalent at the time, that the eastern settlement would be located on Greenland's east coast and that a strait existed nearby communicating with the western half of the island. In fact, his 1723 expedition found the churches and ruins of the eastern settlement, but he considered them to be those of the western. At the end of the year, he turned north and helped establish a whaling station on Nipissat Island. In 1724 he baptized his first child converts, 2 of whom would travel to Denmark and there inspire Count Zinzendorf to begin the Moravian missions. In 1728, a royal expedition under Major Claus Pass arrived with 4 supply ships and relocated the Kangak colony to the mainland opposite, establishing a fort named Godthåb, the future Godthåb. The extra supplies also allowed Egede to build a proper chapel within the main house. More scurvy led to 40 deaths and abandonment of the site not only by the Danes but by the Inuit as well. Egede's book The Old Greenland's New Illustration appeared in 1729 and was translated into several languages. But King Frederick had lost patience and recalled Parsy's military garrison from Greenland the next year. Egede, encouraged by his wife Gertrude, remained with his family and 10 sailors. A supply ship in 1733 brought 3 missionaries and news that the king had granted 2,000 riksdollars a year to establish a new company for the colony. Under Jacob Severin, the Moravians were allowed to establish a station at Neuhernhut and in time a string of missions along the island's west coast. The ship also returned one of Egede's convert children with a case of smallpox. By the next year, the epidemic was raging among the Inuit, and in 1735 it claimed Gertrude Egede. Hans carried her body back to Denmark for burial the next year, leaving his son Poul to carry on his work. In Copenhagen, he was named superintendent of the Greenland Mission Seminary, and in 1741 the Lutheran Bishop of Greenland. A catechism for use in Greenland was completed by 1747. He died November 5, 1758, at the age of 72 in Stubbekøbing at Falster, Denmark. Legacy. Egede became something of a national saint of Greenland. The town of Egedesminde commemorates him. It was established by Hans's second son, Niels, in 1759 on the Iqaluit Peninsula. It was moved to the island of Aasiat in 1763, which had been the site of a pre-Viking Inuit settlement. Statues of Hans Egede stand watch over Greenland's capital in Nuuk and outside of Frederiks Church in Copenhagen. His grandson and namesake Hans Egede Saabye also became a missionary to Greenland and published a celebrated diary of his time there. Hans Egede also gave one of the oldest descriptions of a sea serpent commonly believed to have been a giant squid. On the 6th of July 1734 he wrote that his ship was off the Greenland coast when those on board saw a most terrible creature, resembling nothing they saw before. The monster lifted its head so high that it seemed to be higher than the crow's nest on the mainmast. The head was small and the body short and wrinkled. The unknown creature was using giant fins which propelled it through the water. Later the sailors saw its tail as well. The monster was longer than our whole ship. Gallery.